ingredients here called interior angles. Okay? The interior angles of a triangle. Thing that we talked about yesterday, that from just looking at all the triangles we dealt with, what if we looked at, there were some triangles where they gave us measurements for them. When we looked at every single one of them, what did we find out?
That they added up to 180.
That they added up to 180 degrees. So guess what a big theorem is for today? Interior angle theorem of triangles. It says that the interior angles of a triangle always have to add to 180 degrees. You will use that over and over and over again in this book. So obviously that is an important thing to remember. We use it a lot in math in general. When it comes to triangles, are something that are very useful and used a lot. Okay? Should have put the measure of angle A, measure of B, measure of B, C. Okay? Do we know what this symbol means? Which I hope we do. When I put that in front of an angle, what does that mean?
Right.
Right degrees.
It means that it's a right angle, meaning it is what?
90 degrees.
90 degrees. Well, if this is 90 degrees, what's left for these two to be? How much is left out of 180? 90. So we could say they have a theorem that says the measure of angle B plus the measure of angle C has to equal what? 90. Me personally, this one is not that important. Because can you get that one from this one? Okay. I don't want you getting confused thinking that I'm going to introduce it because it is in the book. But at the same time, I don't want you thinking the measure of a triangle add to 90. What do they always add to?
180.
Okay, that's something that needs to be just ingrained into your head. You'll use it again and again and again. So, what if all the angles are the same? What if I said all of these were congruent? And by the way, if all the angles are congruent, guess what all the sides are?
Congruent.
What do you think the measure of each of these angles has to be?
60.
Why is that? In your own words.
Because they
60
all
times
have
3.
to be the same and they
Yeah.
equal one.
They all have to be the same and equal 180. There's only one way to split up 180. 3 equal ways, and that's divided by 3, and what do you get?
60.
There's only one way to split up 180 equal in 3 equal parts. That's 60, 60, 60. So that's easy enough, isn't it? Like I said, guys, you're going to find that this is something you use over and over and over again. I mean, you guys remember something that I talked about something like this? What do we know about angle 1 and angle 2?
They add to 180.
Because that makes a straight line, doesn't it? That has to be 180 degrees. That's another one of those. That's one of those things you can look at a picture and you know that. And the reason I make such a big deal of that is in your geometry questions and things you do from now on out. Those things, they're never going to tell you those things in a problem. They're going to give you information about a problem. Which you're going to find in every single problem in geometry. They're going to give you some information and say, hey, find this. Well, they're never going to say to you, angle 1 and angle 2 add to 180 from this point on, because you're supposed to know that. Does that make sense? You're supposed to know that if it's a straight line, they add to what? 180. So they don't have to say that in the question. You're supposed to you're supposed to look at that and know that. From this point on, when you look at a triangle, they're not going to tell you that what? This angle plus what? That angle plus what? That angle equals?
180.
That's one of those things you can get at by what? Looking at it. They won't necessarily tell you that that box means 90 degrees, will they? They'll just put the box there. Does that make sense? Another thing they won't tell you, something we've talked about. You've got two lines, even though I didn't draw a very good straight line. What can I look at this picture and tell?
Got 4 and 3 here.
Angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Why? What's the word? Vertical angles. Anytime two lines intersect and you make that X, right? The opposite angles are always what? Congruent. So angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. And I know this isn't in this section, but I'm just kind of adding those, kind of saying here's another thing that when we look at the picture, we can say this is true. If it's a triangle, the angles add to what? 180. When you look at it, you see that X? The opposite angles are what? Congruent. When you see a straight line, what do you know they do?
They add to 180.
So we're just adding a few more of those things that you're kind of, from this point on, you need to know. Okay? Make sense? So let's apply that knowledge right now to some problems. Let's get that worksheet out. Find the value of each variable.
Is that right?
We all have some more worksheets.
You can have mine.
She
No.
needs one. She needs it. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, looking at this picture, what do we have?
Two angles.
In general, what do I have? I do have they have given me the measure of two angles. That is correct, you're not wrong. What do they have here? What is that a picture of?
A triangle.
That's a triangle. Okay, what does this section want us to know?
Where the angles are triangles.
The angles of a triangle. Can you guys fill in a little more, please? Come on, what did I just talk about?
The equal 180.
They equal 180.
What do you mean equal 180?
Like you
Say
add
it
one.
more math way for me. I know that's mean of me.
Angle.
The angle's what?
Add to 180.
That across. They add to 180. I bet you that has something to do with this problem. What do you guys think? These three angles, interior angles, have to add to what?
180.
Did they give me two of the three?
Yeah.
So I know that all three of these together, when I add them up, have to add to what? 180. How much have I used with these two?
95.
95? I've used 95 degrees for two of them. So how much is left for the third one? If you can't do it in your head, you're going to do what? 180 minus what? 95, right? What do you get?
85.
So this one's 85 degrees. Does that make sense? Once again, you got to look, all they told you is that this was this and this was that and find the variable. They wanted you to see that and know that the angles add to. Okay. Now, they're not always going to be that straightforward. Sometimes you're going to have things that you're going to have to make an equation with. Look at number 2. Have they given me a number for these variables?
No.
Or for the angles, I'm sorry. No, they haven't. My directions are to find the value of this variable. If I was a betting man, what's probably going to be an important thing in this section? Knowing that what? Angles add to?
180.
No matter what this is, I know this thing that my finger's over, plus this thing, plus this angle have to equal what?
180.
Just write what that means now in a math type sentence. So what is it saying? That x plus what?
2x.
2x plus what?
3x.
Has to equal.
180.
And here's another thing. I took this for granted in my 5th hour geometry class, and this this is something I guess we should talk about. But sometimes we forget about the small. Don't sweat the small stuff enough. You guys know when in the book, some of these pictures are pretty small, aren't they? You know what I mean? Like this is a long ways away. Sometimes they'll be way out here and pretty small. Have you ever, remember the ones where they've got an arrow pointing in right here?
Mhm.
And some of these triangles are pretty small to where it's hard to tell what they're talking about. If I was to put a 4 right here, what am I talking about there? I'm talking about the side. But if I was to put it on the inside, how would I know that I was talking about that side, a side instead of the angles? Do you guys know? Ah, there it is. If you'll notice, like look at this one right here. That's a weird looking thing, isn't it? But what gave away what they're talking about? They have parentheses and then the what?
Degree sign.
What is measured in degrees? Angles. So if you see degrees on some of these smaller pictures in the book, and that's probably the first time someone's asked me that in 2 or 3 years. That's probably why I forgot or didn't say anything about it. Is you see degrees, what are they referring to? Angles. So because look how small this is. What if they were talking about this side? They're being 2x minus 2, right? It's kind of tough to tell. But if you see that degree sign, they're talking about a what? An angle. Okay? And the books do a good job of that. So that's one way to kind of, if you're confused, let's face it, if you don't know what they're talking about, you're going to have a hard time doing the problem, aren't you? Okay? So anyway, here we have this. Does this look like an equation you can solve? Yeah, it looks kind of weird, but it looks weird because there's like terms to combine, isn't there? You've got, remember, that's 1x here, 2x's, and 3x's makes a total of equal to what?
180.
Now, does that look like a really simple equation to solve? In the problem just asked for the value of x, right? Or the value of our variable. So we did that, didn't we? Any questions? You see how we related things right there?
Yes.
Okay, next one. Looking right here. You see how I have the arrow there because it's too small? What are they talking about? Degrees. They're talking about an angle. If it looks like an algebra problem, I probably need to create an equation. How do we know these angles relate to each other?
They go 180.
They add to 180. Do we know something we could put down for each angle?
Yes.
What's this angle? What can I put down?
X plus 5.
Plus. Do I know something for that angle?
It's 90 degrees.
Plus. Do I know something for that angle? What does all that have to equal?
180.
Now, don't get all flustered, because remember, if you guys will remember back in algebra, if it's a weird looking equation, there's probably what you need to do to it.
Combine like terms.
Combine like terms, simplify, multiply, do something. D, pay attention. Are you at least doing the worksheet? No, you're not. You're doing assignments. Now, like terms are here and here, so that's what? 3x, here like terms,
93.
plus 93 equal to 180. Now, does that look more like an equation you're more used to solving, where you know what to subtract or add to both sides?
Yeah.
Subtract 93. 3x is equal to 87. 29, is that right? Write that down. Make sure you have that. And I'll zoom out in case you didn't get a chance to write down the other one, so you have a couple things to use as examples. Number 4 looks like something you can do, doesn't it? 5 looks like, what do you know all of them have to be?
60.
60. Is 6 just like the one I just did on 3, except that what is your equation going to be on 6?
X plus 40 plus 64 plus
2x minus 5 equals?
180.
Very good. So I'm going to go to 7. Let that be the next one we do. Has everybody got this down? Can we go on to 7?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what did I tell you guys when we were doing these? That there's probably some things you're going to have to be expected to know. Look at it one triangle at a time. Looking at this triangle, what can I find out? 43 and 50 is what?
100.
Yeah, that's 100, isn't it? So how much is left for this to be?
80.
So that's 80 degrees. Because those three add to what?
180.
Okay, now how does that help me
It's supposed
find
to
my
be
variable?
The
100 on the
opposite
other
is-
side.
Are these not two lines making an X?
Yeah, there.
Right, another one of those things I told you guys were gonna have to know, right? Imagine that, they incorporated it into some of these problems. If this is 80, what's this angle?
80.
How does that help you?
You get them on the other side.
If these two are the same, I know there's 100 left for both of them. But there's only one way to split up 100 evenly, and that would be what? 50 and 50. Would you agree? So that's what X is. Questions on that? You guys okay? Now, I would say on one like number 8, the picture is as confusing as anything else. Okay, what I mean by that is, you know, it's what's what and what are they talking about? Well, when they do a right angle, for instance, the right angle here is from where the box starts to where the box ends, right? So that's that whole angle right there. So y degrees is talking about what? That little angle right there. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And the 65 is referring just from here to what? There. So what is left for y to be?
35.
Well, this from here to here is 65. What's left if the whole thing is,
90.
what's left for y to be?
25.
35.
25.
25.
Basically, whatever 90 minus 65 is, right? If you can't do that in your head, I mean, as long as you understand, you know, you can put that in your calculator. Now, this is 25 now, right? This is what? Can I find that now?
Yes.
This is 25 degrees, this is 90. How much do they make together?
115.
115. So whatever's left out of 180 out of 115 is what z's got to be, isn't it? So 180 minus 115, what is that?
65.
65? Is that right? So that one's 65. Now, how does that help me find x? And here's the tough thing to see. I was talking about the little triangle first, wasn't I? What triangle am I talking about now? That'll probably
big
help me.
one.
The big one right here. So 90 and 65, what's left? Huh? 90 and 65 make what? None of you have calculators. You can put that in
150.
your calculator.
Yeah.
150 or
55.
155.
Yeah, 55.
So what is left for x to be?
25.
And if you'll notice, you could have used the smaller triangle here too, couldn't you? Because if that's 90, what's that got to be? Because they have to add 180, so 65, 90, and guess what that has to be? 25. Works either way, doesn't it? So you can see how they're combining a bunch of triangles to try to confuse you a little bit. But if you look at one triangle at a time, you'll be okay. Now, down here, let's look at number 11. First of all, don't try to look at this whole thing at once. Take that out of the equation. What do I basically have? A triangle. Well, what's the relationship there? How can I make an equation?
It all adds to 180.
I know 55 plus what?
41.
28 plus
Plus
what?
40 plus
40
40
plus y.
plus y has to equal what?
180.
1.
Does that allow me to find y?
Yes.
Yes.
Find your like terms here and solve. So that's how you find y. Does everybody agree with that? Now, how in the world am I going to find x? What did I tell you guys? What did I do after I talked about the angles added to 180? What was the first thing I did? Let's look back. Let's rewind. What did I talk about? Some other things that what? Or add to 180, or things that you can look at the picture and know this is true. Remember the x? Helps things congruent. What else did I talk about? Whenever two angles make a, what do they have to add to?
180.
Do I have either one of those situations in this problem?
Yes.
What do I have for number 11?
Straight line.
I have a straight line right here. These two angles together make a straight line, so what do these have to add to?
180.
So what would my equation be there? How do those two relate to each other?
6x minus
7 plus what?
55
Equals,
180.
that's all.